Terry, I'd like to introduce you to Tricia, and
Hi,
to our
Tricia.
listeners out there, I'd like to introduce you to Terry Sullivan. I was chatting with Terry just prior to us starting here. I think I have referred something in excess of 500 people to him to look at their LinkedIn pages. How can they make them better? How can they use them for marketing to do things better? So, Terry, it is my pleasure. I guess this is 9 years we've been doing podcasts and presentations together. You are the man. Welcome to
Well,
CEO Talks. I appreciate you.
well, thank you very much. It's an honor to be here. Just got back from working with a client in upstate New York, and it's very nice to come back to somewhat cooler weather here in Flower Mound, where I live in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So thanks for the invite.
Well, certainly. Well, we're fractional CFOs, so we have the opportunity of talking to a lot of business owners and people that are in transition because, as Tricia will share, we do a lot of, try to do a lot of servant leadership. If there's anyone that is in job change, position change, they're trying to figure out what they want to do when they grow up. And sometimes they just don't know.
Yeah.
So they consider first a job, and second, what can I do in the interim, which is basically fractional. And for C Suite Network, we have the C Suite Support Council, which is one of the councils with the group that is nationwide. And anybody in the fractional world, they refer to me. Terry, anybody that's in the working world, you refer to me. So I love to try to do that. So, Terry, today we're going to be talking about we're going to be turning LinkedIn into a sales conversation engine without becoming the person that with the direct managers of being that person. So tell us a little bit about what you do. You're internationally recognized LinkedIn guru. I
Yep.
say guru, branding and selling trainer, but
Yep.
you do a great job. So tell us
Yep.
a little bit about you.
Okay. Well, thank you very, very much. I started my company in 2010, and I've had my company for 15 years, my 15-year anniversary. And it, I got to tell you, Paul, I didn't start my business by the traditional means of coming up with working with maybe a fractional CFO and coming up with a business plan and launching it. What actually happened was I give over 100 presentations around the United States and Europe and South Korea a year. And I gave presentations all over the place. And I met this one lady, networked with her, Lisa Woodard, and she invited me out to actually, I helped her land a job. She had been unemployed for some time, and I helped her land a job as chief marketing officer with Transamerica out in Los Angeles. And it was fascinating because she called me up and she said, "Guess who landed a job as CMO with Transamerica?" And I said, "Wow, congratulations, Lisa." And she said, "Well, it's payback time." And I said, "Well, what does that mean?" She goes, "Well, I want you to present LinkedIn branding and social selling to our top 2,500 largest clients who own businesses for Transamerica out in Los Angeles. How much would you charge?" Well, I was just helping people out for free at the time, just looking for a job. And I gave her a really big number and she said, "Okay, send me an invoice." I went, "Oh, that's fascinating." And so my wife and I jumped on a plane 2 months later, but it was when the event happened. It was really, really fascinating. The night before, we were walking up and down Hollywood Boulevard, and it was really fascinating. We ended up on the Jimmy Kimmel Show, and so they played the Jimmy Kimmel Show the next morning at my big presentation. And next thing you know, it was a big hit. Presentation went off really well, and when I got home, I had over 100 people that called me up that own businesses, saying, "Can you do the same thing for me and my company?" So that's kind of I created a business plan after that, Paul. So I kind of did it in reverse, and I've been helping people for many years and companies. I've had the opportunity to work with some amazing professionals. I know you guys have all eaten at Chili's restaurants, and so I actually worked with Larry Levine, who's turned out to be a good friend of mine. But he's the founder of Chili's. He started Chili's in a bank building, South Dallas, many years ago, and he's the number one entrepreneur, I think, in the country, or at least the number one entrepreneur that I know. And if any of you guys ever want to meet him, or if you'd like an introduction to Larry Levine, I'd love to introduce you to him. He's going to open up a new restaurant chain, so he's looking for some financial backers. I told him I couldn't afford the amount that he gave me, but if you'd like to meet Larry Levine, he's truly an amazing guy. And I've worked with so many others as well. I've worked with an Olympian from Nike. I've worked with, oh gosh, I could go on and on, but the main thing is I help people do two things. One is to create a LinkedIn brand that tells people who you are, what you do, and how you can help. And then more importantly, I think these days I train people on social selling. And social selling, if you're taking notes, is all about how do you find, connect, and develop relationships with your key contacts and prospects. You know, so many people have a LinkedIn profile and they have that magic, they've used AI and they've got those magic keywords in there and they sit back and wait for something to happen. But really, when it comes to networking these days, you know, with today's technology, it's all about you taking the lead with your social selling efforts to find, connect, and develop relationships with your key contacts and prospects, and getting your social selling index in the 70s, and that's super, super important. So that's
Well,
what I do.
I understand. And as you know, we ran into each other, and I asked you to speak to the C-Suite Network Group, C-Suite Support Group Network. And that was an eye-opening thing for me. So I said, okay, I don't know what I'm doing. I think I do. Of course, everybody on this call and everybody that will subsequently listen to this through the C-Suite Network TV system is going to say, well, I know what I'm doing too. Until you look at it and then you realize, man, maybe I don't know what I'm doing and I could use some help. So, first off, I would love to have an introduction to Larry Levine. And I'm sure that since he's in the Dallas area, that periodically we might get him together with Christian. Christian's here once a month for the C-Suite Network Mixer, which we have 90 to 150 people show up every month. And they're all VP level and above. So these are people that, Terry, if you have time, you might want to join and just rub elbows with some of these guys, and maybe some of your knowledge will rub off on them.
Well, Larry, I think Larry would be a great speaker for your show. He doesn't give as many presentations as I do around the world, but he's all over the place. And
well, let's get the introduction and go from there. But today is our effort of trying to figure out what do we need to do as a group, as an individual, to improve our individual branding, our company branding, and how we can be better when somebody finds us, and then translate that into what can we do better to have more people find us. So, I sat down with you for 6 hours. Now, I'm pretty sure now I'm going to get in trouble here, but we do have a C-Suite Network company that does what Terry does. And when I talk to them about what they do, they charge $6,000 to do that.
Wow!
I told Terry, you're too cheap.
I need to raise my rates.
I understand, but the difference is Terry is a servant leader. So Terry, define what social selling is in plain English? What is it, and what is it not?
Sure. So social selling, it's all about how do you find people. You have to come up with a strategy, a daily routine, and I suggest that your audience spend 15 to 30 minutes once you've updated your LinkedIn brand. You really need to come up with a strategy to find people that you can network with, to connect with them, and develop trust and rapport, and using LinkedIn. And once you develop that trust and rapport, and you've connected and built a little bit of trust there, then you want to, as soon as possible, take your online discussion offline. And that's where the real magic happens. So here I am, I train people on how to network with LinkedIn. I train people on social selling, but I'm telling you, the best thing you can do is get off of LinkedIn and start, picking up the phone and talking to people, or going to one of your networking sessions, Paul, and meeting people face to face, because that's where the sales should happen. You should never, in my view, sell on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's a networking site. It's not an inbound marketing, direct mail kind of thing. And so it's really use LinkedIn as a networking tool to find, connect, and develop relationships with your key contacts and prospects, so you can ultimately take your online discussion offline. Does that make sense, Paul?
Absolutely. And what I'm going to share with that is that LinkedIn is your profile. It's the storefront. But let's talk about, what do you do to fix the windows in your storefront? What do you need to do there?
Well, let's just, the first thing you want to do is I would check your SSI score, your social selling index. And the way you do that, if you're taking notes, there's really two big steps here. Step number one is you want to open up LinkedIn, because otherwise AI will not pick up your profile if you don't have LinkedIn opened up, right? So open up your LinkedIn brand and then go to the following, write this down. The following URL is linkedin.com/sales/SSI. So that's linkedin.com/sales/SSI. But remember, you have to open up LinkedIn prior, otherwise it's not going to be, you'll get a LinkedIn Sales Navigator page. But there are several, 5 key metrics on your social selling index page. And at the very top, you'll see two metrics that are super important. One is your network SSI score, and the other is your industry SSI score. And your industry and network SSI score, the lower the number, the better. So if you are in the top 20% of people in your industry, you're doing great. If you're in the top 10%, you're a rock star. And same thing with your network. So, on LinkedIn, in terms of what you've declared as your field of expertise on LinkedIn, where do you rank with the competition? And you want to make sure that you're in the top 20%. And then your overall, it's called your current SSI score, needs to be in the 70s. And notice how I didn't say it needs to be in the 80s or 90s, because if you're in the 80s or 90s, or your SSI scores in the 80s or 90s, you're selling too much on LinkedIn. If you sell on LinkedIn, people will run from you and they'll block you. So again, it's all about finding, connecting, and developing relationships with LinkedIn, so you can ultimately have a conversation that leads to a sales pitch or a sales discussion. So you really want to get your current SSI score up in the 70s. And there's 4 components in your SSI score. Number one is your brand, which is what we're going to talk about in just a second here in terms of what you can do to improve your brand. But your brand score, you want to have that score be the maximum you can get on all 4 of these components of your SSI score is 25. So, but with your brand score, how well, is your LinkedIn set up? Do you have a brand that tells people who you are, what you do, and how you can help? Do you have all the sections complete? Do you have keywords that are strategic to your brand in your skills section, et cetera? And I'll go over all that in just a second. The second thing is finding the right people, and that's critical. I have a process that I have created, and you can reach out to me, connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'll send you my 25, 15, and 10 social selling strategy. And what you want to do there in terms of that second metric, you need to get that above 15%. It's find and connect with key contacts and prospects. And every day, basically, I'm just going to high level it here, Paul, but you want to send out 5 connection requests a day, 25 per week, to keep contacts and prospects. You want to connect with 3 of them. That's where the 15 comes from. And then very, very important, you want to have at least two conversations a day with your new connections. So that's my 25, 15, and 10. And I can go into a lot more detail on all that in just a second here. The third thing, third component of your brand score, of your SSI score, is your engagement. And I can't tell you how important that is. I highly recommend that if you're taking notes, write this down, but you need to, on a daily basis, to get that engagement score up, you need to like, comment, or share on 3 to 5 posts per day. Like, comment, or share on 3 to 5 posts per day, and curate, which means you want to post someone else's copy, or you can write your own if you have the time. Curate 1 post per week. Using feedly.com is what I would suggest. Feedly, it's F as in Frank, EEDLY.com. And that's a free news aggregator that is phenomenal. And it will be a great place for you to source some articles within a minute that you can repurpose once a week into LinkedIn. So you want to get your engagement score up to 15% or higher by liking, commenting, or sharing on 3 to 5 posts per day in your newsfeed. If you see something about Paul's podcast or one of his upcoming networking events, like it and then comment on it. And make sure you always, if you're going to like on something, go ahead and write a sentence or two, to comment on it as well. The way LinkedIn works is if you have a tremendous number, let's say I post something and all I have are likes, what happens is that my reach, which is how many people will actually see that post, actually goes down, because I don't have any comments, and LinkedIn AI thinks that I'm a bot, and so they'll actually decrease my reach. So there's three metrics. There's your brand score, your connect with the right people score, and then your engagement score. And then the last one is just building relationships. And to build relationships, you want that to be maxed out at 25 points. Whenever I work with my clients, their build relationship score, it always maxes out at 25 points. But that is, you need to get on LinkedIn every day for 15 to 30 minutes and implement my social selling strategy. If you get on LinkedIn and implement the strategies that I train people in my training sessions and one-on-one coaching, they always get their scores right where it needs to be. So that's how you tell how you're doing with your LinkedIn brand, Paul, and how you're doing with utilizing LinkedIn to find, connect, and develop relationships with your key contacts and prospects by checking your social selling index, which is found by opening up LinkedIn and then going to linkedin.com in your browser, right on top of it, not a separate tab, but go to linkedin.com/sales/SSI. Make sense, Paul?
It absolutely does. And you shared that with me a long time ago. And I'm going to share with you that after 2 years of me individually working with that, I was able to raise my score pretty well. The
That's
only
good.
negative is I was after that 90% plus on social selling index. So I was selling hard. Can you imagine that, Terry?
Yeah. When I train sales teams, they always compete to see who can get the highest SSI score, and I'm like, don't do it, don't do it.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I
Well,
mean, usually the people. This is going to sound kind of strange, Paul, but the people that have the highest SSI scores aren't always the best salespeople with the best productivity. You'll
I
find.
understand.
Yeah.
I converted to your system, and now I'm number one in industry. I'm number
Holy
nine in
cow!
network, but I'm only 64 in the social selling index. So that's telling me I'm not building enough relationships out there.
That's pretty
And
close.
I want to build more relationships. I'm trying to follow your lead. I'm probably going to have to ask you to come back and say, okay, over the
Let's try.
last few years, I've gotten carried away myself and gone out there and made a few changes to my website or my LinkedIn, and I probably need you to come back and look at it and say, Paul, fix it, do
Yeah.
something here. So we were getting out there pretty frequently in terms of impressions and stuff, but
Yeah.
I'm not getting enough on my social selling index for building relationships. I'm going to work on that. So I
Well,
appreciate
64 is not a bad score. I'm working with a CEO right now of a marketing firm, and his overall SSI score is 18.
it.
like I'm like, dude, you're representing a big brand here. Let's get busy. So 64, I would say, Paul, is really good. And I'd love to know your individual component scores. I think that would
Well,
be
there's
fascinating.
where I know it's good. I'm 21 on brand.
Oh, wow. That's one of the highest brand scores I've ever seen. What's your
Well,
connect with the right people score?
15, not enough.
That's good. Oh, you hit the target, man. And then I guess engagement's your least score?
13.
Yeah, not bad. Not bad. Hey, you're close.
Well, we're going to work on that. That's why we have to refresh ourselves to get better all the time. And my relationships is only 15 as well. So those are the two areas that I need improvement. And I have to be refreshing because, just like anybody,
Yeah.
everybody's got a coach, and Terry, you're my coach.
Well,
So
thank
let's
you.
talk about the some of the things of the profile that are necessary. I mean,
Okay,
these things
so
are
sure, let's go through that. So first of all, if I were going to kind of do a rebrand, or if I had a profile that I haven't really updated in a while, the first thing I would do is use AI to find 100 terms, branding terms that are strategic to your brand. And what do I mean by that, Paul? Well, if if I'll just give you an example. I worked with a CFO. You'll relate to this one for sure, not too long ago, and his branding headline at the top, you get 220 characters to tell people who you are, what you do, and how you can help. And his CFO brand at the top went something like this: CFO, EVP of Finance, VP of Finance, Director of Finance, and Finance Manager. That was his brand. And your brand should tell people not only who you are, but what you do and how you can help. So it was all titles from the most senior title of CFO to down to a finance manager position. And so I asked him, I said, what is your which one of these titles is your dream job? And he kind of snapped at me and he said, well, CFO, of course. I said, well, let me ask you something. That he snapped at me, so I thought I'd kind of be a smart aleck right back to him. I said, well, do you really think that any recruiter or CEO or board's going to consider you for a CFO position if you have finance manager as a probable job for you in your branding headline? So that kind of shut him up pretty quickly, and we cleaned up his brand pretty quickly there. But so the first thing I want to tell your audience is load up your skills section using AI. And also look and see what your competition's doing. Come up with a big old list of 100 key terms that are strategic to your brand. Stay away from non-strategic terms like, for example, Microsoft Word. Whew, you got me excited. Paul knows how to do Microsoft Word. Okay, I'm going to hire him. I kind of have debates with my CFOs all the time because, like, I worked with a Fortune 100 CFO 6 months ago or so, and he was like, he said, man, I've got to have Microsoft Excel in my brand. I said, well, let me ask you something. I said, how many controllers do you have in your company? He goes, I've got 5 controllers reporting to me. I said, great. I said, now how much are you engaged on a day-to-day basis with Microsoft Excel? And he said, not very much. He goes, I just read reports. I don't really do any of the Excel work anymore, but I read reports. I said, great. I said, so do you really need to, have Microsoft Excel as one of your key branding terms in your branding headline at the very top of your profile? He said, well, all the jobs that I'm applying for all are saying Microsoft Excel required. I said, well, as a Fortune 100 CFO, you're probably applying for the wrong jobs. So, so that was it. But I mean, put it in there if it's going to help you. But so pick terms that are strategic to your brand. I'd pick 3 focus areas when you use AI. I would say, hey, tell AI, I'm a certified Jasper AI trainer. I love it. It's made specifically for sales and marketing executives. It is phenomenal. You don't have to be a prompting expert like you do with all the other AI apps. But at any rate, you want to ask AI to generate 100, and I break it into like two times 50 because it seems like AI gets really bogged down if you ask it to do too much at one time. But I would say, hey, give me 25 terms that tie into leadership for a fractional CFO. Boom. Give me 25 more terms, another run, for leadership for a fractional CFO. Boom. I've got operational experience as a fractional CFO, so give me 25 terms that tie into operations for a fractional CFO. Boom. And so then compile that list of 100 using AI, and that's super important. So get terms that are strategic to your brand. Number 2 is make sure that you position your top 2 terms that in your list of 100 to the very top of your skills section. This is super important because it's a collapsed section and nobody looks at terms 3 through 100 really. They may if you ask them to, but you'll get a lot more endorsements for your top 2 skills that are showing at the top of your skills list. And when that happens, you'll be more findable, more searchable from an SEO perspective, search engine optimization perspective, if you have those 2 terms at the very top where you have more endorsements. So 100, get 100, use AI to find 100 strategic branding terms that you can add to your skills section. Use AI for that. That's the best way to do it. Also look at the competition to see what terms they're using. But AI usually gets 90% of it. And then secondly, figure out what are your top 2 terms and put them, reposition them. There's 3 little dots. So you can click on the 3 little dots after you click on the magnifying glass in the upper right-hand corner, and then you'll see a change order. It says reorder command. So you can change the order of those skills, move the top 2 to the very top, and then terms 3, here's the hard part, Paul, terms 3 through 100, put those terms in alphabetical order. And why is that important? Because you want to do a campaign where you reach out to your top 10 contacts who know you and say, hey, Paul, would you please, I'm in the process of trying to pick up some new clients with my new fractional business, and I really would like to be found for these terms. Would you please endorse me? Well, if you don't have terms 3 through 100 in alphabetical order, they will never do it. They're not going to dig through a haphazard list of terms. So put terms 3 through 100 in alphabetical order, and then reach out to your top 10 key prospects or 10 people that know you for your work, I should say, and ask them to endorse you for your top 5 or 10 skills. And that way, that'll help your profile be found more readily with SEO searches. Makes sense? Makes sense,
Makes
Paul?
absolute sense. And one of the things I'm going to mention is when I did this,
Mhm.
if you change the name, if you had CFO and you change it to fractional CFO, whatever you had before goes away and starts again.
Yeah,
So if
yeah.
you've already got one of those skills that's out there with 50 or 75 or whatever,
Endorsements, yeah.
yeah, don't change the name. Put it,
Yeah,
yeah,
leave it in there. Yeah.
it's close enough. And I mentioned that because when you and I sat down, I had 50 sitting out there and we did some name changes and so on. And I had a bunch sitting at 99 and all of a sudden I didn't
Yeah.
have it. Going,
Yeah,
okay.
that's a good point. Yeah, if you've got a sizable number of endorsements for a skill, even though it's not quite strategic, like maybe leadership, I see that all the time, and someone will have a whole bunch of endorsements for the terms leadership. Okay, but leadership is probably the number one overused term on LinkedIn, so you're not going to be found for that term. But leave
Not
it
at
in there.
all.
Leave it in there, because if they do a combo search, I'm looking for a fractional CFO with operations experience that also, worked for Fortune 500 company, and they also have leadership experience. Then that helps you. But just for someone to do a keyword search, just for leadership, you're probably not going to show up unless they're doing a Boolean search using Boolean modifiers. I can talk more about that if you'd like. So
All
that's one
right.
thing. So that's one
Let's
thing.
roll.
Mhm.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Terry.
Oh, so get your skills section up going, and then the second step is of your top 100 skills. Now that you've got them entered into your profile, what are your top 15 skills that tie into those top 3 or 4 core areas of your key areas of expertise? So leadership, fractional finance, operations, maybe your mergers and acquisitions, M&A kind of, maybe that's your thing, or maybe you're more into operations, whatever it is. But what you want to do is pick up out your top 15 skills from that list of 100. And then the third thing is, from those 15 skills, that's when you create a branding headline that can be up to 220 characters that tells people who you are, what you do, and how you can help. And so, but you have to kind of do the homework first. So many people want to jump into, oh, I'm this, and they create their branding headline without doing the AI research to find out what are the words that truly are strategic to your fractional CFO brand.
Exactly. All right. Well, in terms of trying to go efficiently because of time now, some of the major areas that you got me into after you got me cleaned up there, which was necessary, as we talked about headlines, custom URLs, banner and headshots, things of that nature. Let's briefly go into those things and efficiently tell this group what do you got to do to clean up.
Yeah. Well, your banner image at the top, so many, I can't tell you how many profiles I look at of very accomplished professionals, and they have the 3 shades of gray. They haven't put anything up there. Or like when I worked with that Olympian, he had a horrible picture. I mean, I said, don't you have a picture of you on the starting line of an Olympic event? And I could show you his profile. It's just like, it's a stunning photo. So try to put a photo up there that is going to really capture the attention of your audience, a photo that has a story. You don't have to, so many CFOs, they have pictures of Dallas. They live in Dallas. Okay, I get it. You want to stay in Dallas, or you live in Dallas. But just, if you are a mountain climber and you're in sales, and you have a picture of you on top of a mountain, holy cow, would that be a great photo? Or I worked with Emma Minto. She was senior vice president of women's apparel for Nike, and out in Portland. And I said, don't you have any pictures of you presenting to your big team? She had over 1,000 people in her downline. And she said, no, I don't, Terry. I said, well, Mount Hood's somewhere by your house. She goes, yeah, I can see it out my business window. And I said, well, fantastic. Grab your iPhone, put it in landscape mode, and take a picture. And go take a look at it. Her name's Emma Minto, and it's not. She can say that's my backyard. So the first thing you need to do is make sure that you have a banner image that helps create conversations with your key contacts and prospects. the other thing is make sure your profile photo doesn't have any competing objects in the background. My attorneys love to have pictures, their photo with bookshelves in the background. You know, it makes them look smart, I guess, but it makes your photo, that round photo, look so cluttered. So with my clients, I always eliminate the background and I change the background to either white or I make it match one of the salient colors in the banner image that I've selected for them. I worked with a CEO last year and I couldn't get him to change this, but a really respectable manufacturing company, and his picture in his profile was of him kissing a dolphin. And he just thought, oh my gosh, I'm getting all kinds of attention because, you know, I'm kissing it. And so I said, do you really want that kind of attention? But I guess he did. So I would say have you don't have to have a professional shot, but you have to have a shot where you're looking right into the camera and you've got a big smile and you put as much of your smile in there as possible. Any questions on those two photo suggestions there, Paul?
No, not at all. And you go ahead. And one of the things that you pointed out constantly to me, and every time we talk, is if I have that photo here, I should have that photo
Yeah.
Facebook, Instagram. I need to be consistent wherever I'm sitting in this world.
Yeah. And you need to use a fairly recent photo. Last year, I had a client I worked with up in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and he picked me up from the airport. And he had a sign, fortunately, he had a sign saying Terry Sullivan. And I said, Bill, is that you? He was the CEO of the company. And so he was a little older. He had used a photo in LinkedIn of him when he was in college. And, you know, he was a little older than that when he picked me up. So, yeah, use a recent photo. Make sure that your brand is consistent from platform to platform to platform. So if you use link, you know, a lot of I have a Facebook business page. I use Instagram. So make sure that your banner image and your branding headline is as similar to your LinkedIn. Start with LinkedIn, your brand there, but then make sure the other social media platforms are consistent, and not, you know, just make sure that your brand is consistent not only with your imagery in your banner image, what have you, but also in your posting efforts. It's so very important. I worked with a chemical company out of South Dallas. I guess it was last year, and I always used to tell this story, Paul, about, you know, what, you know, just make sure that when you post things, you use professional images. I said the worst thing you can do is like have a picture of you jumping off the bow of a boat with a Bud Light in your hand, running a company. And I was presenting to this big group of people, and the CEO was right in the middle of the audience. And the CEO, he was as red as a tomato, and everyone was laughing at him. He had this laptop, and I had to stop presenting. And I said, what's so funny? And he turned his laptop around, and there was a picture of the CEO of this manufacturing company jumping off the bow of a boat with a beer in his hand. I said, you probably want to take that out and keep it a little bit more professional. So yeah, so your brand needs to be consistent from platform to platform to platform. It also needs to be consistent from online to offline. So I've so many times, Paul, I meet people in networking sessions, and or I talk to them over the phone and I go, wow, this person is a flip. Larry Levine was one of those. I mean, founder of Chili's. I mean, you looked at his profile, it was a shell. It was horrible. But you know, so you want to make sure that your online brand matches your offline brand. I meet people, I talk to them, and I get really excited, and then I go to their LinkedIn profiles and I can't tell what they do. So make sure that your brand matches not only from social media platform to platform to platform, but it's also consistent from offline to online and online to offline. Otherwise, you're going to cause a brand conflict. So, yeah, that's a really good point, Paul.
Well, one of the things, if I'm going to work with somebody or I have a call coming in and my calendar's out there where a lot of people can come in pretty random at times to speak with me. If I go to their LinkedIn profile and it tells me something that is not very professional, two things. One is I don't know what I want to talk to this person about, or if I'm trying to look somebody up and try to find somebody that I may want to talk to,
Yeah.
or if they're applying for a job. Boy, when somebody's applying for a job and they've got something like that in their LinkedIn, they're an automatic no. And
Yeah.
that I don't think I'm unique in that. I'm sure recruiters are not unique in that, but CEOs, if they're seriously going to be talking to somebody about a position or a referral or fractional referral, you go out there and you see something that is of not of good taste, may not be offensive, but not of good taste, they're going
Yeah.
to be starting to walk away.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's very important. And today I'm looking up someone I'm trying to get connected to. I know the person personally, and he's probably close to my age, and he's got a picture in there of when he was maybe 30.
Yeah. Right.
And I start laughing. I said, "Okay, here's vanity at its best." But
Yeah.
you have those kind of situations. The other thing that comes to my mind is, and I'm going to mention this, if they go out to your website, and I put it in the chat here for buzzpro.com,
Yep.
you have downloads out there that help walk them through to get some of the basics done.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
and then with that, it says, okay, I need to know more, call you and let you help them. So I wanted to mention that. But the other thing that
Thank
kind
you.
of stuck in my mind is vanity URLs. How many numbers can I have in my URL for my name?
Well, you don't want any numbers, and you don't want any characters either, right? So what happens is when you create, if you go to the contact info link at the top of your profile, the number one searchable term on the internet, and that's not only with Google, but that's with Bing and Yahoo and any kind of search. The number one term for you as a brand is your name, your first and last name. So you want to be found for your first and last name. So one of the big things you can do is, and I'll give you some other tips as well, but change your vanity URL to your first and last name. And you can find your vanity URL, it's your LinkedIn URL, by clicking on that contact info link at the top of your profile. And what happens is LinkedIn creates your vanity URL with a dash between your first and last name and plus a bunch of characters at the end. And that destroys the ability for people to find you for your number one searchable term. And it certainly helps from a visual perspective, hurts your brand as well. So change that to your first and last name. If your first and last name is not available, put something at the very end. That's something simple. I put MBA because I've got a master's degree at the end of mine. You can put the day of the month you were born, just something simple. But change your vanity URL to your first and last name. And as far as on this topic of being found, with SEO searches and that kind of thing, with your name, the other thing I highly recommend you do with your company, if you have an official company, is use a branded hashtag on your posting strategy. So when you create a post, you should use 3 to 5 hashtags on LinkedIn. They're still pretty prevalent on LinkedIn. And but the first hashtag should be a branded hashtag. It can be, if you're a job seeker, put your first and last name using upper and lower case. If you are a business owner, put your BuzzPro, upper and lower case, hashtag BuzzPro. That will help you your company be found or help you be found. And then lastly, just for those job seekers that are on your podcast here, if there are any, make sure at the very end of your string of hashtags, you use hashtag ONO. And that's a really important hashtag for job seekers, and that stands for open to new opportunities. And a lot of my recruiters, I'm connected with over 1,000 of them, they all tell me they use that quite a bit to find prospective candidates for jobs. So yeah, vanity URL, that's my take on it.
Well, share with me what's the funniest headline that someone's put on their LinkedIn page that actually worked, because that's another thing that is, it's going to follow you every time you post, every time you comment, and it's going to be the first thing somebody reads after you pass your name.
Yeah, yeah. I had a CFO that got mad at me not too long ago. He used to have a picture of an animal for his profile photo, and he had a real, I'm not going to tell you what his brand was. It was horrible, and he really wanted to get the attention of prospects, and networking contacts. And so I said, "Why are you doing that?" And he said, "Well, I really am trying to cut through all the clutter on LinkedIn and get attention." I said, "You don't want to do that." And so I don't think it ever helped him get any clients. And I always used to talk about it, Paul, in my presentations, and I would show this picture of him with his branding headline with a picture of a monkey, and I'd say, "Don't do this." And so, boy, he got really mad at me. So I don't, as far as the best one that actually worked, the terms that actually work, especially for CFOs, are the branding headlines are the type that really you don't necessarily have to have a title. If you're a fractional CFO and you want people to know that, put it in there. If you are a CFO with operations experience, you might want to say something like, CFO and operations executive. So it kind of, weights both somewhat equally. So you don't have to use a title. The question I always get from finance executives is, hey, I've been a VP of finance and I've been a, SVP of finance, and I really want to get that coveted CFO position. And some of them have worked for Fortune 500 companies, and they're like, I'm going to put CFO up here. Well, you'll get in trouble. That's not true. You haven't been a CFO yet, but you can put the first term should really be who you are, and you can put a term up there that will really let people know that, you could say strategic or global. Put an adjective in front of it, finance and operations executive, and then followed by 5 to 7 terms placed in order of importance to your brand, from most to least important. Maybe, if you were a visionary, strategic planning and execution with an ampersand, followed by, maybe operations focus or process improvement and optimization. If you've worked in different industries, diverse industries is a really, really big key uh, key selling point. Last year I presented to several CFOs from this Harvard group that they all went to Harvard in Houston, and they were all from the energy, oil and gas industry, and they were struggling because they didn't have any other different industry experiences. So if you have diverse industry experience where you've worked in maybe different types of service or manufacturing, that's a big, big selling point. Put that in your branding headline. And certain, and I can send you some examples if you connect with me of different types of branding headlines that I use with my clients. I'd be happy to send that to you. But then at the very end, you want to tell people how you help. And if you're a CFO, one of the best things I think you could use is like revenue and EBITDA growth, or results driven, or process improvement, or if you're more on the creative side, innovation, growth, and transformation. There's something at the end that tells people how you help. So your branding headline, Paul, to answer your question, you have 220 characters to tell people who you are, what you do, and how you can help. And I would use terms separated by a delimiter. You can use either a vertical line, or you can use a centered uh, dot, so to speak, but separate them, because if you just kind of run them all together from a search perspective, they don't show up very well. And then commas don't look all that professional. So that's my take on uh, don't try to get attention by having a false kind of brand that can be offensive to some people. Instead, really tell people who you are, what you do, and how you can help. That's my suggestion on the branding headline.
Well, Terry, and for the sake of time here, I'm going to summarize here that you do an hour presentation that is fully packed of multiple of the kind of ideas that we talked about this, but in that presentation, you show examples.
Yeah, oh
And
yeah,
you take it out of the kind of esoterical into here's a real example, here's how you really fix it.
yeah, oh yeah,
So
oh
anyone
yeah.
out here that would like to connect up with him, we've got BuzzPro in the comments here. It's buzzpro.com, Terry Sullivan. And with that, I'm going to open up to some of the listeners here to ask some questions. So I'm going to do this randomly. So be prepared with your mics turned on, guys.
Okay,
Um,
I know Isabella has a question.
oh, I know Isabella has questions. Isabella, what is the question that you have for Terry?
I'm sorry, I was on mute. I find that
Pressure's on, Isabella.
I'm I find it so interesting, the work you do, Terry,
Thank
and
you.
I love the question, Paul, about what's the funniest header or introduction from someone.
Yeah.
And my question is on the hold on. Okay, so how how can how can I like balance um, who I am, what I do, and how I can help with content? How can I reflect those three simple questions and be able to produce content that keeps people engaged and also gives my LinkedIn sales number up?
Wow, that's a great question, Isabella. Thank you. First of all, I'm a big AI user, and so what I would do is I would describe to AI, what type of professional you are, what you want to be known for. Let's just say it's a fractional CFO and with a concentration in mergers and acquisition, also have some operation. Just give it to explain to AI what your brand is all about, and then secondly, I would say once you've done that, and I would say based on uh, the my who I am, what I do, and how I can help. Give me 25 topics that would resonate well with my LinkedIn audiences, and so you'll get a great list of 25, but maybe only about 10 of those topics will actually really resonate with you and your audiences. So you have to pick them out, and then I would highly recommend that you create. Uh, you, reach out to AI and and I have mine is all automated with Jasper.ai. I don't have to be a template expert. Template is just asking AI to do something. So I actually would create a template if I were you, Isabella, that says this is my brand voice, and I would have a different brand voice for your LinkedIn post versus your Facebook post versus your Twitter post, Instagram. Your brand voice for each one of those platforms is going to be slightly different. But I would just grab that template that you've previously created that explains who you are, what you do, and how you can help, your brand voice that you want to use, and what type of post you want AI to generate. And then just I will be very candid with you with my posting, Isabella. I just put in a title and AI goes boop. If just go look at any of my posts, and I'll edit it afterwards. So use AI to automate your posting strategy to tie into your amazing brand and your personality too. You've got a dynamite. I can tell you're a great communicator, Isabella. So make sure that Jasper understands you don't want that real esoteric kind of lingo. Just I'd say make my content warm and friendly. And I always tell AI, make it sound more like a human, because it always sounds like a robot's talking, So, but you'll still have to edit it. And I do. It takes me such little time to do posting. I'm doing posting now for 10 of my clients, and I don't charge them. It takes me no time at all, and I can generate a month's worth of posts in 5 minutes, and or less. I mean, I just poop poop poop, and then I let them edit it and give it back to me. Then I use a social media management tool called socialbee.com to auto post. But just remember, if you use an auto poster, marketing tool like SocialBee, that your SSI score, engagement score will go down by 10 points. LinkedIn will penalize you for using an auto poster. And you don't really need it anymore because when you post on LinkedIn, as you know, Isabella, you can use that hourglass in the bottom right-hand corner of the posting box, and you can schedule that post. And that's what I do. On a Saturday, I'll spend a little bit of time and create sometimes 2 or 3 months worth of posts in no time at all. And then I'll schedule them all out using that hourglass feature. I hope that answers your question. I really appreciate your bravery in asking me that question. Thank you.
Thank
Bravery.
you so much, Terry.
Well, she was the first, Paul, and
Thank you, Isabella. Well, I was going to turn to Galen here and see if Galen has any questions before we start to wrap. I need to allow Tricia to give us some closing and some links for what we're going to do for all the activities in the background. So, Galen, if you're available, do you have any
Good
questions
morning.
for Terry here?
Good morning. Thank you, Paul. Yes, I am heading over actually to Plano. Carrie and I are getting our photos done this afternoon. But Terry, I just want to shout out to you that similar to Paul, I met you in 2018 when I was searching for a job, and just want to commend you for the wisdom you had then. And I'm so impressed that you're, an
Oh,
expert in AI already.
oh, I love it.
It's
Yeah.
amazing to me how much information is out there. I know Jason spouts off all this stuff. So I think similar to Isabella's question is, I would like to be able to make it through LinkedIn a little bit faster, that feed. I got on LinkedIn way back when I worked at AIG. And so, there were a gazillion people that you were connecting with. So I have so many people that I'm connected with, which I like, because now they rank you on how many you have. But
Yeah.
you have some best practices for that?
In terms of how to just get on LinkedIn and get off of it.
Well, the feed, I know I got on Facebook a while back early on too, and it was one of those things that I finally realized that I could, mute people and, not
Yeah.
offend them and stuff. Is LinkedIn similar to that, or what's the best way to clean up
Yeah.
your feed?
Yeah. So let me just say that LinkedIn, there's such a big migration from the other social media platforms to LinkedIn because a lot of the feeds, and I'm not going to mention the platform names because I love them all, especially Instagram, but there's a lot of not some just a lot of garbage in their news feed. So, but what LinkedIn does, they take pride in it, and they actually they use AI, from what I understand. They never really tell you exactly, but they're obviously using AI to eliminate bad posts. And then also they have hundreds of employees, and I know this because I talked to one of them, but they hire people to actually go through the post and see if there's anything that they need to to reduce the reach. They won't delete the post, but they will actually make it so nobody can see that post. So the first thing I want to say is that LinkedIn has the best feed when you connect with people. If you connect with someone and you immediately start seeing sales posts in your feed, one of the best things you can do to maximize your time in your feed is to block them. Just because I give someone permission to connect with me on LinkedIn doesn't give them permission to load up my news feed with sales pitches about their products or services or send me sales pitches. I block people probably, I don't know, maybe 2 to 3 a month, something like that. So block people that are not, who are trying to sell something. That's not what LinkedIn's set up for. And then in terms of, how to get through your news feed, there's still going to be a lot of garbage. So what I do is I pick out my top 10 influencers that I'm connected with on LinkedIn. And I connect with people who are connected with hundreds of thousands of people, and I call them my influencer, right? And so I'm on a Mac and I set up a tab and I click on my influencer tab, and every morning within minutes, I go through my 10 influencers, and it's the best advice I can give you in terms of expanding your reach with your brand on using posting and getting new business. Because what will happen is like Ann Handley, she's amazing. She'll get 500 posts within 1 hour of one of her posting something, and she connected with me. She's very nice. And then what I do is I like and I create meaningful comments, and then I'll always get 10 to 20 people looking at my profile and a sizable number of people actually reaching out and connecting with me. Last year, I got a client out of Montreal, Canada. There was a book author influencer that I follow, and I made some comments, and she just reached out to me. She said, "I just love the interaction between you and this author. I'd like to talk to you." And she turned out to be a client of mine from Montreal. So one of the best things you can do is find, you don't need 10, pick 3, but find 10 influencers. If they're related to business, they're on LinkedIn, right? They may or may not connect with you. If they connect with you, that's golden. That means they're open. And every one of my influencers, and I can send you mine, I love them. And like Neil Schaefer, connect with Neil Schaefer out of LA. He's been one of my influencers for probably my entire 15-year career with BuzzPro. And he'll respond to your posts. You'll get new connections from people that are in his world, and it's just a win-win. So the 2 suggestions I have for you are, number 1, get rid of the people selling in your news feed. It's not proper to get rid of it. Number 2, pick out 5 to 10 influencers or less and set up a process. I've got a process. It's one click and I can see all my influencers, and another click and I'm in their newsfeed reading their post, most recent post. So, start following and liking and commenting on posts of people that you're connected with on a first level basis. And then lastly, if you have any prospects at all, make sure that you ring the notification bell. And there'll be a bell in the upper right-hand corner of their LinkedIn profile. It's an outline of a bell. When you click on it, it will turn dark, and then there's an option for you to get a double bell. You'll see two little bells if you do it right. But anything that happens with that prospect, if they post something in your news feed, you'll get a notification in your notification link at the top of your profile, and you can immediately respond. Start building trust and rapport with your key contacts, and even more importantly, your prospects, using the notification bell. It's a really slick way to just keep it. And you can thumb through your news feed, but I don't really do that. I focus on my influencers. If I see someone I've recently connected with and they're doing big sales pitches, boom, they're blocked. And then I, really focus on my prospects. And I will also tell you my referral partners. Paul Whitley is one of my top referral partners, and everything I can do to help him. If he posts something, I'll like and comment on it. If he's hired a new person on his team, I'll comment on it. That's because I've rang his notification bell and I get notices something great happens to Paul.